in a
Ah,
stupid shirt.
good afternoon, fellow aliens. Welcome to Leprechaun Alley.
Aliens.
hmm My name is Carrie,
I
and
am Michael Perillo.
I guess he doesn't like his stupid shirt.
Well,
That's how we started the show today.
I have a lot of shirts on. This one here looks like the background.
No, that's that's
Anyway,
awesome.
I'm here and alive and well, and I will remind everyone that we give free astrological readings. They're very short readings based on just 3 points that are valid in astrology. That we're also available to give complete horoscope readings, which require calculations and a significant amount of time to give a proper reading of the natal chart. Natal chart is the astrological positioning of all the planets at the time of birth, not just the day and the year. In the event, these are available by us and whoever wants them, if they want to take any, if they think astrology is a serious parascience, then they'll call us and
But
ask
yes, you click
for
it. Yeah, click on the link. You click on
right,
the link in the
right.
comments
Yeah,
section.
Carrie is more
So
familiar with this linkage stuff. I once was a very good operator of computers. As of late, I've kind of lost interest in computers.
So if
But
you would like an astrology reading, what you do is you just type your birthday and year into the chat and post that for us. Oh no, that's
I can't
or
read
no,
that
you don't need
anyway.
to. I'm sorry, I was just moving that other way. Or in the comments, you can leave your birthday in the comments below, and we will do an astrology reading for you
Right. You can ask any
in the
questions
next
you
show.
want. If you're in the chat room, you type those
Yeah, anything
into,
you want to talk about, any
and
topics you're
hopefully
interested
we
in.
will read them while we're conducting our session, which we try to keep it interesting with a variety of subject matters. Today, Carrie has an interesting set of readings that she would like to make on the basis of some ancient knowledge, and she's melding that into some of the events that are not that ancient,
Oh,
but they've taken place, and I think most of the population is familiar with the subject matter she wants to cover. I will stand by here
oh.
and provide whatever I have as input. And I will try to keep it interesting, but hopefully Carrie will do that very well without my help, although my help is available. And I'm here to provide, to make it as interesting as possible where I can. I will not pretend to be able to engage conversation if I'm not familiar with the subject matter as well as Carrie. But Carrie will do a good job, I know.
Well, we'll see. Okay. Well,
Let's get started.
I had a couple of ideas that I was spinning around today, and at first, what I was thinking about is there are a lot of popular theories out there, conspiracy theories, metaphysical ideas, revisions of history, and I was thinking, well, we go into the alternate universe, and it can be really difficult to navigate through those waters. Like it's difficult to listen to, and
By the way, just to elaborate on what Carrie has just said, the alternate universe, it means that there are many, many, many aspects to the universe, and she is going to discuss that part of the universe that applies to us, but that we don't really refer to very much because the subject matter has either been put to sleep, it's been resolved either by truth or by hook or by crook, as a lot of things that happen to us happen, and the recital of the events as they occurred are not always truth. And Carrie is going to try to elaborate and expose some of these things. And hopefully we can tie it in with astrology if and where it's possible.
well,
So Carrie is going to start, and I am waiting to participate.
so anyway, we're some more popular ones that are coming up are Well, there's a conversation about Tartaria. That's very interesting. I'm listening to a lot of
Well, explain to people what the
I,
Taria
I'm listening
means.
to I'm listening to a lot of conversation for or against or different points of view. And Tartaria, so far, to my understanding, there is a
Doesn't it
theory out
express
there.
parts of the earth that were under Tataria? Or
No,
oh,
no.
okay, well, then I have that wrong, sorry.
Yeah, Tartaria is a fairly new, and I don't really know a lot about it, so I've just been listening to it, and it is kind of hard to piece together when you listen to it. You have to listen to a few things, and um, it's there's a theory out there that there was a big mud flood and that history was reset like in the mid 1800s, and there's a lot of evidence that and Tartaria, I guess, was there's supposed to be a very powerful, incredibly advanced civilization that some say spanned um like almost all
Well,
of Europe and
it
Asia.
certainly had to be older than 5,000 years old.
Yeah, but no, but that spanned all of Europe and Asia, and that there was another grand civilization that was in the western side of the planet as well. And there are different symbologies that correspond. There's something in the cartographies that are confusing, and I haven't been able to really organize it to understand it fully. But I think that's interesting, and there was also right now there was the Titanic. That's another one. The Titanic sinking was insurance fraud. At the end of the day, like the grandest form of that. That's another one that's out there. And there was one more that I was going to bring up.
Well, it'll come up as you go.
Right, and so what I like to do is, oh yes, yes, and then like the really awful one. This is the one that I was going to bring up, was also Pizzagate.
Pizzagate.
Yeah.
Oh,
So and I don't want to really talk about that in depth because it's but most people are familiar with it. If you don't, you can do like a little Google search. But what I thought was so interesting about Pizzagate is that it we had something that was actually happening, and that had to do with
well, I would
with
tell
Jeffrey
the
Ep
audience what you mean by Pizzagate. Pizzagate was
Well,
obviously
that's what no, I said I
involving
don't they know most people
Hillary
right,
Clinton.
most people we're not we can't. Most people that come here know what that is, and that's what I'm making the reference for. I can't really go into too much description about it,
Why not?
because it's not okay on YouTube. You can't really go into too depth with it. You just kind of
Oh,
mention
all
it,
right.
yeah.
So I take that back.
So yeah, but the thing is that we had an actual extant story and person that and uh, ring that was happening, and that was through Jeffrey Epstein. And
I never associated the two, but
oh no, they're not. Well, what I'm saying
all
is,
right. Go ahead.
yeah,
Continue.
and so
You explain it.
and
I
so I have to
don't
use the
know.
verbiage carefully. So with his crime
Like I
ring,
said, I'll add only what I know.
yeah, with his crime ring, that's something that already existed. And of course, when Pizzagate became this huge conspiracy theory and became so popular, it was more well known that what was actually going on with Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, what we know is that Jeffrey Epstein has records of some incredibly high level people all over the world, like hundreds of people, in these little in his little black book and all of those things. And of course, what has happened is Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and Jeffrey Epstein. Well, we know that that wasn't really the case. The official story is not the correct story. So whenever we're listening to those things, though, it's really easy to get swept up, and we have to have a way to sort of some things kind of seem plausible. Of course, a lot of this stuff has to do with, just sifting in like little tidbits of truth into like a grand lie in order to glue something together to make it look like it's true, to make the story true. Um,
I keep the top on that bottom, and I lose the salsa.
okay. And and so it's easy to kind of get caught up in it and kind of research it. Of course, and Tartaria is something that's really interesting too, because there are some components of it that concern me as what has happened historically is that people that have their own cultural agenda will do whatever they can to rewrite history and demonize or cast blame on, like they're looking to cast blame. And so sometimes when I look at the way that they organize the legends or the conversation, what I have to ask myself is, who would get hurt right now if this was true, and who would benefit? And I have to have a really honest conversation with myself about it. So, and kind of the answers to those questions within themselves are going to be the indicators for whether or not they have validity. And then this other one I thought was kind of interesting is that the Titanic was actually the Olympic, and that it was an insurance scam because they were because the Olympic had caused some accident. I don't have the whole thing perfect, but and as a result, the Olympic was actually the company was actually sued, and the Olympic they didn't get any insurance money or anything to help pay for the damages. All of that came out of pocket, plus the lawsuit came out of pocket, all the repairs. There were 3 ships that already existed. And so that the company wouldn't end up folding, the Olympic was actually switched out with the Titanic as a means by insurance fraud, and 2 really important moguls of that time that were also against the Federal Reserve were on board. So
You forgot to mention that the Olympic and the Titanic were
right, they were
sister
twin boats,
ships.
right? They were sister
twins.
ships, right? And so what happened was the
Right.
Titanic, they were swapped out, and the Titanic, and the Olympic was the one that was actually sank, and the Titanic was still in the dock, but they switched the names so that they would be able to collect the insurance money on the
Because the Titanic had insurance.
right, because the Titanic had insurance, but and the Olympic was a liability. So now, I would say that would be perfectly in character. That would not be surprising. However, there are also other plausible arguments, and it's important to listen to what those are. And I also don't appreciate arguments, though, that the arguments that aren't helpful when you're listening to counter arguments are when you finish reading the story and they give you a bunch of word salad. The only conclusion is, no, it's not true because it's absolutely ridiculous. So there's a lot of articles that end up saying nothing more than that. And that can be really frustrating because it doesn't help give us answers. But I was thinking, you know what? We do actually have some birthdays and birth dates. And we could maybe it's a stretch, but it might be kind of fun to have a conversation to see if we could determine if we'll just separate it from more thinking along the lines of being a challenger and as a fight, who would be more likely to win.
Okay.
And so we have JP Morgan's birthday. He is April 17th, or he was April 17th, 1837.
The 17th of April is supposedly Leonardo da Vinci's birthday.
Ah.
What year was he born?
1837, which actually turns out to be the year of the fire chicken. The fire cock. Okay.
So he was a dragon chicken.
Right. Now, John Jacob Astor the Fourth, his birthday is July 13th, or was July 13th, 1864, he turned out to be a Cancer year of the wood rat. Isidore Strauss, and I did have to go back and check the Chinese year as well, birthday is February 6th, 1845. However, he still falls in with the year before, and he would be the Aquarius wood dragon. So just based on the three of them, well, JP Morgan up against those two signs, what would be the likelihood that he would win or that he would defeat them in some way?
Trying to absorb this.
We can start with Morgan
was,
against Astor first.
a month of the dragon, year of the chicken.
Right.
Up against
We'll start with
a
Astor,
rat
a Cancer wood rat,
and a dragon.
an Aquarius wood dragon.
One of them is a rat. What it was he?
John Jacob Astor. He was the wealthiest man in the world at that point in time.
And he was a wood rat.
Yes. And he
was a Cancer.
Yep, and he died because the Titanic sank April 14th, 1912. So he died in the year of the water rat.
Why would he die then?
Because he was on board the Titanic when it sank.
So how does he factor in any of this?
Because he was one of JP Morgan's enemies. He and Isidore Strauss were on board the Titanic. And JP Morgan was supposed to be...
You just told me that they sank the Queen or whatever it was.
Well, it's... Okay, we're just going to pretend...
Queen Elizabeth, right?
No, the Olympic. No, we're just going to pretend... For right now, we're just going to keep calling it the Titanic, okay?
But if it was the... What was it called? The Olympic that sank. How does the other guy who's on the...
Well,
the other guy's on the Titanic, which didn't sink.
No, these guys are on board the ship that sunk.
Oh.
You understand? They were on board the ship that sank.
Oh.
Okay.
Who caused the ship to sink then?
According
to this conspiracy
the theory is that JP Morgan caused it to happen for the insurance money so that the company wouldn't go under.
How did he achieve this?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not saying I advocate that.
Well, we're not in a good footing if we don't know how all of this went down.
Yeah, well, that was when it crashed into the iceberg, Michael.
You mean the Olympic was deliberately sent into an iceberg? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. That's what the theory says.
I don't think they had the technology to detect icebergs at that time.
I'm not talking about that. I'm just...
Yeah, but that would have been an incredible coincidence.
Yeah, listen.
Go ahead, just finish telling the story.
So what I'm saying is, so his adversaries, JP Morgan's adversaries, are John Jacob Astor and Isidore Strauss. And I'm saying in an adversarial...
dragon and the rat?
And I'm saying, yeah, so we'll start with the rat first. We're going to start with the JP Morgan against a Cancer wood rat. We're going to start with an Aries.
The wood rat went down with the Olympic.
Yes.
And Strauss is the other one.
Yes.
And he went down with the Olympic.
Right.
So you're saying that Morgan orchestrated this?
I don't know that he did.
Well, then what's the point of this?
I first want to establish... We're going to forget about the Titanic for a moment. We're in an adversarial situation.
I got it. I heard you.
Astrologically, who would be more likely to win? We do this all the time. It's the same thing as just...
Who would be more likely to win? But the other two didn't even know they were going down.
I understand that. I'm not asking... No. I don't want that right now. I just want to establish we're not even thinking about it. Let's just pretend...
Whether or not the other two had the disadvantage.
Right.
And the advantage would have been with the Aries chicken?
Well, according to the theory, it would have to be with him. But if it's not with him, then maybe that's not right. You understand?
Astrologically, I don't know that the chicken could compose something like that.
That's what I'm saying. So, and
also... Then it couldn't have been Morgan.
But what I'm saying is, the other question...
Chickens are not that good at constructing that kind of...
I'm asking this question. Does he have the advantage astrologically if they were in combat? Only that question. That's the only
No, the
question.
chicken would not.
Okay.
So how does he wind up winning?
Right. So we could conclude from that angle that if that maybe we shouldn't rush to conclusions.
The
Maybe
rat is a higher octave of the chicken, so it has the advantage. And he went down with the Olympic.
exactly. So
And the other one is the
that's right.
dragon.
Right.
The dragon doesn't have an advantage at being
An Aquarius wood dragon.
It would not have the advantage in any conflict because the dragon has to either be engaged or it's not engaged at all.
Right.
So he's not a non-factor.
Okay. So then astrologically what we could say is we could argue that it wouldn't be
But
likely.
we have to know that this trio was in a conflict of some kind. And then you can start discussing
Right.
whether or not one has the advantage over the other. But
They were in a
how would they
conflict.
be in a conflict
They were in
if
a
they're on the
conflict
ship that goes down?
because they were in a conflict because they did not support the Federal Reserve and JP Morgan supported the Federal
But they
Reserve.
went down, so I'm losing the connection. But anyway, go ahead. You can go on with your theory.
Well, if he wasn't likely to win the conflict, we could say, well, then he wouldn't necessarily be likely to set them up. That's my point. There wouldn't be, because if you're going to beat somebody, you do have to plan ahead, no?
Well, all that I've read about Morgan is that he was a positive influence, and you're describing somebody who had a negative influence, and I don't know.
Oh, well,
J.P. Morgan funded the United States when it was in financial trouble. I don't know that he was in that much trouble where he needed to sink another ship in order to collect damages that.
well, the only conversation was simply between astrologically. And so we could say astrologically, we could just say that just like in the trial, we could say astrologically the likelihood of
But
him.
in the trial, we had two people against each other, and we could calculate on the basis of the astrological nature how the outcome would be. In this case, we have two people that went down with the ship.
Well, here's the
So
thing.
they obviously weren't in direct conflict with the
Well,
one who didn't go down.
Here's the thing: the ship sank. So here's the other thing that would be an argument against that. J.P. Morgan would be behind it because the ship sank April 14th, 1912. That would have been a water year, and he's a fire year, and a water year isn't his friend. So it
Which
wouldn't have
would have
worked
meant
out.
that it didn't work out for him.
It wouldn't have worked out for him. Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. So if we just look at it purely astrologically, we could maybe kind of think of it like that.
But then why did you bring these up if he's not if it doesn't work according to the conspiracy theory?
I'm saying
According to this conspiracy theory, Morgan set all this up, but it
Right.
wasn't a favorable year for him to win.
Exactly.
So how could he be setting this up and win?
So I'm saying, so that theory is out there. It's very popular right now. And so I'm saying, so here's a presentation astrologically that's saying, you know what, it's really, he probably didn't.
Problem with conspiracy theories is you have to have an awful lot of conflicting information that goes favorable
yeah.
to one side or the
Absolutely.
other. Then you have two of the
So,
three.
right, because-
Two of the three sank with the ship. So it seems unlikely that two would lose against one.
Mhm.
It would seem unlikely to me.
And the other thing is that then you also have to look at their individual charts. You know, something could have been going on in their lives, in their dharma, in their spiritual journey that was activated in their astrological
would
chart.
make the
You'd have to
case-
analyze
that-
each of their charts
But
on
the
that
best
day.
you could do with analyzing these charts is to see that astrologically it was favorable for two of them, one of them to be not in sinking in a ship, and the other two.
Right.
Well, you'd have to
Right.
compare first. You'd have to find out why they made the decision to be on a ship that went down.
Right. So then, right. Exactly. No, and
All
so
right,
so
well,
yeah, so
I
at
don't
that
have
point,
any theories
right.
on it.
Yeah, I don't. So I'm just saying there are a lot of different ways to approach this. There are a lot of different ways to look at the information that we're garnering on the web.
And this somehow has to do with Transserbia or whatever you called it. This
Tartaria is it's
Tartaria.
another that's another kind of conspiracy theory out there, or like a
Well, is
metaphysical.
this part of the Tartaria conspiracy thing?
No, I gave a list of 3 different conspiracy theories. This is one. The other one was Pizzagate, and Tartaria is another one. And we were just having a
Well,
for,
the Pizzagate supposedly was
no,
about children being
yeah, no, 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 no,
used.
we're not doing that. We can't do that
Why did you bring it up at all?
because most people. I answered this, honey. Most people know what it is. I can't. And I said, you can Google it, but it's similar to Jeffrey Epstein, and people know who that is too.
All right. Okay. Well, whatever you
And
say.
so what I was saying is, so when these things come up, here are some things we need to think about when we're digesting this information. And then
Okay.
I said, you know what? Because we have the astrological, the birthdays of these
Yeah, but
individuals.
I can't make a comparison when two of the ones that are in contest are going down with the ship that's not even the one that they say it was. And then the other one, who's the third member, he owns the ship that didn't go down and that was repainted to look like
Mhm.
whatever,
Yeah, the Olympic.
Olympic.
Mhm.
Well, you'd have to go on the date that it was painted and the date that the two ships
Oh, remember, this was like
were
1901 or
constructed,
whatever.
right? But you'd have to go with the construction of the two ships to find out if this was a good day or a bad day for the ship.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All of that.
Well, I don't have that information, and I don't know.
Oh no, that's not well, right,
You
exactly.
know when these
Well,
ships
we're
were
not looking
constructed?
we're
They
not
couldn't have been constructed on the same day.
we're not looking to
Which
solve
one was older? Which was newer? Which was the one that came
well,
out first?
we're not looking to solve the theory.
I wasn't trying to solve anything. I'm trying to get a grip on how to start analyzing.
Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah, we would have to look at the day that they were built, when it was
When
finished.
they came out and they were announced as complete.
Right.
And then when the alteration took place, where they painted the Titanic with the colors of the Olympic,
Right.
and see if that altered the Titanic's uh,
Birthday.
or
Right. Like if you paint.
the sequence of what might have happened to it, whether it was
Very
favorable
interesting.
or not favorable.
I'm also renaming it because if you rename something, that's another form of birth.
Yes, but the date
Mhm.
that it took place would be the important part.
Right. Right.
I
Exactly.
don't think the name would have mattered too much, although unless you wanted to see the value of the name according to astrological principles. You can compare anything
Oh,
astrologically.
what I was thinking though is like if you rename the ships, then they get a new birthday.
Okay, but
But like
the
that.
birthday is the day that they're released,
Right.
not because you repainted it, but because it came out at
Oh.
a different time when it was considered a different ship. Um,
So renaming them wouldn't have an effect? Wouldn't they make that
well,
a
yes,
wouldn't that
it would
make it a
have.
new
It would
boat?
be one of the ingredients, but it
Yeah,
would
it's
not
really
be the.
interesting. I wonder what we would look at.
Well,
Would that be numerology?
when they're released, that's their birthday.
Okay.
Numerologically, you can look at numerology. Really, is the way you
Yeah, I think
lead your
that
life. It's not what might happen to you. Numerology, for instance, you are a 9 and I'm a 7.
mhm,
It's not because what would happen to you is ruled by 9, but that you would live by the laws of what 9 generates. And 9
hmm,
is universal. At its worst, it's very massive confusion. At its positive, it's very generous. It's very open-minded, and it's the culmination of the other numbers. So it can turn into any of the numbers depending on who is influencing them. For instance, I am born my what they call master number, which is the summation of the month, the day, and the year of birth, and that would be called your master number. So I'm a 7, you're a 9. When you get together with me,
mhm,
because 9 is flexible and it's the summation of numbers, then the 9 would reflect a 7. If you're with a 7, as long as you're around me, there's a tendency for you to be like a 7. Why? Because if you add 9 and 7 together, it becomes 16. And in numerology, you continue adding until you're left with one digit, unless you're dealing with the master numbers, which are 11, 22, and 33. But when you add 9 and 7, you get 16, which turns into a 7. Going again with the premise that 9 will tend to turn into the number of the other person if it's under 9. Then you have what you can talk about is the life you lead, because the numbers are really a guide to how you're seen by others, how you see yourself, and what you actually do in life, which is your master number. So while you're around me, you're going to experience life pretty much like a 7. You don't lose the 9 value, but you start to behave a lot like the 7, because the 7 would be the number that stands out when you add it together. When you add the two numbers together, 7 and 9 are 16, which turns into a 7. So um, that's what numerology would reveal.
Yeah.
Astrology is
yeah.
really more like the influence of planets as they affect you.
Sure.
And that effect is considered to be pronounced
Well,
at
I'm
the
trying
time
to
of
think,
birth.
like the name swap might be like
That would be the birth.
it might be in the house, or it might be in like an ascendant versus the sun or the moon, or is there something I'm trying to
Well,
think
you
of?
would do a chart on the two
Yeah, I'm trying to think
dates.
of how I would look at that.
Well, as I said, you would do a
It might be a
chart.
nakshatra.
You would do a chart.
Mhm.
You could do a chart
Well,
using
either one, yeah.
the Jyotish system. You could use the Western system.
Mhm.
That's what I would do. But then you'd have to know the day that each ship was released.
Hmm.
If it was the Olympic that went down, then the original Olympic didn't change its date just because
Right,
the
exactly.
Titanic
Yeah,
was
that I
changed.
understand. That
The
I understand.
Titanic's
Mhm.
supposed events as they would unfold would stay the same because it didn't get changed. Although it might have some change because the Titanic was then painted into the Olympic, it didn't take on the Olympics numbers. It took on the number of when the paint job was done to make it
Right.
look like the Olympic.
Right.
So that's what you could, but now you're doing a chart on the two ships, and that is how you would compare them going down. Forget about the characters involved, because as it was said, two of them died in the ship, which means they really had little or no participation. Although you could do a chart of their birthdays, the two individuals that died,
Mhm.
to find out whether that was a good day for them
Right, that's what I
or a
was
bad
saying.
day.
So then what we would do, we'd also go look at their chart, and see.
I have an itch on my
I know, I know.
shoulder.
When we were outside, I think we have a couple of mosquito bites now.
No, I don't know.
You
It's
know?
probably something I ate or whatever. It's internal because the itching goes and moves around.
Mhm.
It's not the mosquitoes. Mosquito itches usually are very local and they don't move.
Right.
Mine, one minute it's on one side, another minute it's on another side, another minute it's on my leg, then it's the back of my neck, and it's on my nose and on my face. It has to do, I think, with biological conditions that are changing.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Well, that's what I attribute it to.
Oh, speaking of, I was gonna also mention, sometimes I forget, I have a friend of mine sent me this really amazing toothpaste. It's weird. It's bentonite clay with clove oil in it.
No.
It's from a company called Ascended Health. And it's incredible. It really helps clean your teeth up. I guess it's really good for like
Oh, so now we're
infection
going to
and
give
disease.
hygienical
Yeah.
information in this.
Yeah. Well, I like to share a little holistic something here and
It's
there.
whole, all right.
It's, so I
It's a
don't know. I just
hole in
wanted
the
to share
wall,
that. It does. It is good for your health. It's amazing.
or a hole
I'm
in
still
the
playing with
brain.
my mouth.
Hmm. I
So,
wonder if Monica's watching us today.
no, I don't think anybody's watching us today.
Oh,
We're just
okay.
hanging out. They may watch us later
Well,
if we're
today is
lucky.
what, Monday?
Yep.
Too early. Maybe Mondays are not worth doing.
Yeah. Well, that's not true. That's not true. Don't say that. Every day's worth
I
doing.
just suggested that on the
Oh my
basis of
god.
very little activity in the chat room.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still better. Maybe later on. I have.
Whatever, we'll take it as it comes in
Yeah.
either case. And hopefully, we'll have more interesting subjects than this one. This one doesn't sound like it's going anywhere,
Well, it's
unless you
just.
have something more to say
Yeah.
about it.
No, it was just more of a PSA because I know it's. I realize
What is a PSA?
public service announcement.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I realize, we go online and we look at a lot of stuff. It is really difficult to corroborate. And the other thing that is incredibly frustrating is that information that we used to be able to get access to is either buried in ads and pages of BS or just simply doesn't exist anymore.
Well, the biggest problem I find with
And
getting
and there
information,
has been such an incredible lack of transparency with our government that, it's really difficult to trust anyone.
the biggest problem I found with the internet is that much of what is posted by anybody who wants to post it. And you'll find that birthdays that are given are always wrong. I've got, and I have fairly good memory of
Oh
people
yeah, when you're looking
that
for
I've
birthdays
taken
online.
up dates and
Mhm.
it wasn't a Leo. This person turns out to be a Capricorn or
Right.
whatever, because the birth date that was given some 30 years ago when I first went on the internet were given by people who decided they knew and they just posted it.
Right.
And it's not validated by any credentials, by any,
Yeah.
by, let's say, producers and people who have gathered the
Wikipedia's
information.
actually done a pretty good job of that now. They've gotten a lot
Wikipedia
better.
is good, but I've seen them wrong too, because
Oh, yeah,
oftentimes
but
Wikipedia will extrapolate from
you
other
haven't
people
seen a
because they don't
Wikipedia
have the
page in,
info.
like, 5 years. That's
You gotta let me finish
No,
once
no.
in a
Yeah,
while.
yeah.
Wikipedia will, from time to time, extrapolate information from other sources because they haven't researched their own. And I found Wikipedia having conflict with what was said one time before, and then years later,
Mhm.
it all of a sudden changes. And now the question becomes, which one is true if in either one is true?
Right.
And you don't know.
Well, if you have a membership, you can actually go in and, like, anybody can go in and edit Wikipedia, right?
Well, there are people who just will not release their information, so no one really
Right.
knows. And that's one of the problems with giving out information when you're comparing individuals based on what you find on the computer, what you find on the
Mhm.
internet, whether it be Wikipedia or some other source. You don't know if somebody just felt like filling in a date
Mhm.
because they heard of it from their friends or there was a party going on for a birthday and they
Oh.
decided that's the date, but we
Mhm.
don't know if that was the date that they decided to have the birthday party and it wasn't a real birthday, or that they were just
Right.
somebody else was
Right.
reciting that information and they thought somebody else told them that they knew and they didn't really know, and it gets on the internet anyway.
Well, that's what I was saying, like, Wikipedia is actually, like,
So when we
do you know
give,
what Wikipedia is? That's what I was
yes, of
explaining.
course I know.
It's like
I
anyone.
wasn't born yesterday
I meant, like, anybody can go in and, like,
or
edit.
tomorrow. I know about,
Like,
yeah.
we could log on right now and just go edit
Well, I
anything on
just said
Wikipedia.
that
Yeah.
people post whatever they thought they heard, and that's why it's
Uh-huh.
unreliable. So the truth of the matter is that I would say that between 60 and 80% of the time, the information is correct. But it's that 20% when it's not correct,
Mhm.
that there you go, you're giving out information on on this individual, and then you find out either months later or years later that you had the wrong dates.
Mm.
And so you screwed up. And a problem with astrology is that you can give a reading, even if it's wrong, it'll sound right because much of what is said in interpretive value is going to be similar amongst all human beings
Sure.
because we're still human. We
Mhm.
still have basic tendencies that are identical. The problem with astrology is to try to interpret results. And unless you have accurate information, you can't make a case for astrology because since there's so much commonality, you're going to say things that sound true, regardless of whether you have accurate information or not. However, if you were to be doing a long term study of these individuals, eventually it would be found out that if you have the wrong information, it's going to come out as wrong because it's not going to make sense. So you can't go on forever mistakenly giving a reading because somebody screwed up on the actual date. In other words, um,
Well,
if you continue looking up someone's information and their history, if it's wrong, if your birthday is wrong, you'll eventually start saying this doesn't make sense for this type of person
mhm,
with this type of a chart to have
right.
these kinds of experiences, and that's when you'll validate that astrology
Mhm.
has a certain value. And again, I'm going to repeat here, as I do almost all the time, astrology is not a real valid form of um, formulas. It's subject to uh, all kinds of interpretation. It's a subjective matter. So a lot of people will talk, and they'll really be telling you their opinion, not really the knowledge. What you'll hear from us, for the most part, is limited to what is true about the sign, and we don't elaborate and embellish and start spilling all over the place. And by the time that people like that type of people who really don't know, they'll eventually be found out long after the facts. If they didn't follow these individuals for any length of time, they would have gotten the wrong information and thought that they had the right information. We try to be a little bit more conservative that way and stick to only things that are highlights of individual signs and positions. It becomes obvious to us when it doesn't make sense. And at that point, I tend to curtail my discussion because I realize that it could be wrong. It could be wrong. But of course, most of what we're going to say is going to be right anyway because individuals, people are the same. And it doesn't matter what color they are, or what race they are, or what religion they're from. Their astrological nature is not going to change that much or deviate that much from the what we can read in their astrological makeup. And also, let's understand, and we'll say this over and over again, that people still have free will. And therefore, no matter how accurate the data that's given to us to interpret, we could be off with the results because that individual is has the option to exceed his astrological data
Right.
and be something different from what the data indicates. And that gets more complicated by the fact that we have negative and positive in all the signs. And given all the other positions
Well,
that we have to interpret,
once somebody bypasses the need for their chart or the benefit and transcends their chart, basically, they don't need it anyway. They're,
well,
you know,
the point of astrology is that it's going to help you determine
right,
outcomes. So for people that want to know what their best chance of succeeding at this or that,
right, likelihoods and
the
probabilities. Yeah,
astrology will help.
right,
With the wrong information, you're likely to say some things which are going to remain true
right,
regardless. So it is a delicate matter that people give the right information. And oftentimes people don't know their real information.
right.
And they'll give you information they believe is true. And then you're to believe that it's true because they believe it is true. But they don't know. They've either forgotten or they've never read their birth certificate or their parents have never told them when they were actually born. And as a result of that, you can get mistakes that are very innocent and erroneous.
Oh,
And there you are giving an interpretation that's based on erroneous information. I've caught myself with that many, many a times when I interpreted what was told to me. I didn't hear the words clearly,
hmm,
or I didn't hear PM versus AM, or I thought they said July when they really meant June.
right.
And that happens as a matter of the human frailty. We're not always 100% alert and 100% clear at what we hear or what we think we heard.
I find people are pretty self-aware though, because I've definitely seen where you're reading for them and they're like, that doesn't sound like me. And you're,
Oh,
yeah.
but oftentimes they'll say that because
And
there
and the
are
and the
reasons in
the
the
birth time or where you're looking
but
at
there
is
are
off.
reasons.
Oh,
For
no. No,
instance,
no, no, I meant
well, I'll tell you that there are reasons where you could be telling them the absolute truth, and they will see it
well, that
differently.
happens too.
And the reason for that, and I when I was studying astrology, and I was happened to be in the University of Hofstra University, uh, and that was the best place for me to learn astrology because I had many challenges by students that said, "You can't say this about me or that about me because of astrology. I am more than that. I'm not limited to astrology." No one is limited to astrology. All,
Astrology
astro-
isn't limited.
all astrology
How
does
about
is
that?
give you the idea,
Mhm.
the forces that would influence mood and character and behavior, influences that you prefer because they feel comfortable with you or that others feel comfortable. When I was at Hofstra and I would be talking to people and they would be telling me, "That's not me, that's not me." Well, that was their ego. One is the ego. You can't reduce me to a statement. The other one is that, and more importantly, and that's what I discovered, why then, if they disagree with me, why then, when I watch them acting and behaving, they are exactly as I described them, but they disagreed with me.
Oh,
And then I started to realize that there is a midheaven in the chart. A
mm,
midheaven is the way you think, the way you present yourself.
that's true.
And the way you think and the way you present yourself may be very different because they're two very different signs. Give an example. If you're an Aries, which is the dragon hiding in the cave, spontaneity and innocence and things like that. But your midheaven is, let's say, Virgo, which is
My
very,
midheaven is Virgo.
conscientious of itself. It has doubts that it wants to overcome. It wants to have precision, and Virgos are notorious for having doubt, and they feel guilty, and they feel like they haven't really accomplished their best.
Hmm.
And that will come through, um, not so much by their ascendant. They'll be interpreting it. Let's say that they're an Aries. They'll be talking like an Aries, and they'll not see the Virgo nature in their person. And then you'll look at them
Right.
and watch them, and you start to see the Virgo,
Mm.
and you say to yourself, "Why?" And that's when I realized that there are other elements of astrology that you have to take into
Right. You have
consideration.
to know your birth
So
time.
there are an awful lot of positions in astrology that you have to put together like a mathematical equation, and it's not that simple. And
And I'm not
most
that familiar with
and most
my
people
midheaven.
and most people who are
So that's
into
Michael.
astrology do not want to work that hard,
Oh,
or they don't have the capacity to remember that while they're describing an Aries, that they have to also remember maybe Virgo is rising, maybe the moon is in Leo, maybe the Mars is in, let's say, Sagittarius. These all affect one another to produce a very unique person that can't be described just by one or two positions. Most astrologers say, "Oh, you're a Leo. Oh, well, big ego, confidence,
mm,
center of attraction." But if that Leo has a Pisces ascendant, no,
no.
you're not going to
Mm-mm.
see that
Right.
pompous Leo
Hi,
at all.
morons.
And if they have not only a Pisces ascendant, but a Scorpio moon, well, now we know that there's power underneath, and they're not going to let you know about that power because that's the tendency of Scorpio. You have to add that together with the Pisces ascendant, with the Sun in Leo, with Mercury, let's say, in Taurus.
Mm,
They're going to be very physical about beauty, about rich things being around them, having stability and control of their environment. You have to add all of that together. And that is why an astrological reading is not that easy unless you happen to be gifted like me, where you have good memory and you can remember the parts as you're discussing two parts. You remember that there are three other parts that affect those two parts, and you can start accounting for those. But most astrologers have enough trouble just discussing one part, just sun sign.
well, we also have trouble understanding one part. Like as parents, as we're receiving the information, it's a lot, because we also have to like
Well, you have to go
look
through
at
your
ourselves
own.
from a completely different lens.
First of all, you're reading from your own
Mhm.
astrological nature. Then you have to do that
Yeah.
and understand the other one
Mm,
in as much of an impartiality as possible so that you get a more accurate reading.
right.
But still, it gets complex and very difficult. And then, of course, we have free will, which throws the whole thing out
Mm,
there. It's like playing pool. You hit the cue ball, and you don't know which way the other balls are going to go when they're first struck.
right.
They go in any direction they want to. You can hit them from any angle, but you can't predict exactly how each of the balls are going to move around.
Right. And our access to free will is linked to our level of consciousness, our level of awareness. So
Well,
the more self-aware we are.
consciousness determines the quality of your free will,
Mhm,
the quality of
right.
even delivering your astrological nature,
Mhm,
because consciousness is the state of wakefulness. It's the stage of where the soul can really communicate through the mind,
mhm.
and you have consciousness, being awake,
Nice, right?
being
That's a little Moon
familiar,
Mercury working together
and
there.
being very close to the truth. Consciousness, the more conscious you are, the more truthfulness there is in your system, which means you can see through the nuances, you can see through the make believe, through the mask that's pretended, through the let's call it the mood making that goes on with people. We have lots of that,
Mm,
which affects how a person receives the information you're about to give them. So then when somebody says, that's not at all like me, you as a beginner may be crushed and thinking that you screwed up.
mm.
But as a more, let's say,
Yeah,
a
right,
seasoned astrologer will say,
right.
I don't know about that not being true. I don't see all of it right here in front of me, right
Right.
at this moment. And neither does the person I'm talking to. But if I were to ask a third person, which I usually like to do if there is a third person around, and try to confirm what I've said, and usually, if I'm right, the third person will say, oh, yeah, that's him, while the individual is sitting there going, that's not me. But his friend or his mother or his parent or somebody will say, that is me. And
Mm,
then you'll have people, the third person that says, oh, that's not him at all. Because the third person is looking at something different than what the individual really is. Third person has an interest in that person. They
or maybe
like
an
them or
agenda, right?
whatever. Well, they like them,
Or right.
and they
Oh,
share
there's that, right.
only a certain
Which is a
part.
different agenda, yeah.
They share only a certain part of that individual. So that comes through, and it kind of overshadows the full truth. So there's a lot of things that affect a reading that
Mm,
can taint it or distort it or make it appear as something that it is not, or will say things that the other individual or individuals have yet to see, have yet to conclude, because they themselves are not totally awake and paying attention to the other person. For instance, people who believe everything their friends are telling them until they find out from other people that their friends lied to them.
mm.
In the meanwhile, they had a certain opinion about them, which will cloud a reading because, well, they don't know that person to be a liar. And then they're surprised to find out that they lie about everything, their friends.
Right.
So how do you can't always validate it by the traditional methods. Time, as they say, will always remedy everything, and time will usually reveal everything, where even lies will eventually fall apart when time has eroded them and truth is finally uncovered. And well, like a guy like Epstein, a lot of people thought he was such a fabulous boy, only to find out that he was a demon.
Well, and the thing that's interesting about him, speaking of some other interesting connections, is that that is just the tip of the iceberg.
But we can look at
Yeah, I
why
mean that it's actually a means by which to attract investment
and
into
why could he come across
research at
as
Atlantis.
innocent and all? Well, he's a dragon. And
No,
the
Jeffrey
strength,
Epstein is a snake.
are you sure? Because and I see there, here comes a conflict. I was told he was a dragon. The year that he was
Yeah,
born was the
double-check.
dragon. Now you tell me as a snake, which would make more sense. But if he was a dragon, I understand how it could be that he is a dragon as well. So you can look at it.
He is a dragon actually. January 20th, 1953, Capricorn
Yeah,
dragon.
so a 52 water dragon.
Uh,
So what can we say about the dragon? Well, the dragon can
Yeah.
appear to be innocent, childlike, and spontaneous, so that people will agree with him. But then when they find out that he's been spewing lies all the time, and by the way, when we go to the 52 dragon, that happens to be a difficult year for the dragon. 52 dragons are water dragons, and they're totally out of control because water people tend to be very volatile. They're emotional, they're unstable.
Well, and
Uh,
it is believed that Ghislaine tended to be the brains behind the whole,
she
and
was,
her father is Robert Maxwell.
yeah, but
She's 1961.
she was what, a rat?
No, Capricorn. I mean, I think she was a Buffalo. Hold on,
Was
let's
she a
look at it.
December Capricorn? If she was a December Capricorn, 61 would be the buffalo, the
Yeah.
boss.
Hold on.
Mhm.
Well, she also has her moon in Astrology, which is that's Vedic astrology.
Well, I don't
that's-
understand that.
But that would be if
What's in the Western?
hold on, I'm looking right now. I
Oh,
know,
how
but
did you know it was
may I also
Appalachia?
speak about that?
You can speak of
Well,
it,
because I
but
have her chart.
talk
'Cause
a language that I can speak
I
on.
have her Vedic chart on the computer.
Well, fine, but if you're looking her up, getting into all of these chambers and the moon mansions and all of that, I
December 25th, 1961.
so she's a buffalo,
Capricorn
boss in
Buffalo.
charge.
Double.
Yeah, 61 metal. Well, metal people tend to not see their own faults because they're like steel. Their strengths are to fight hard, to win for their cause. Their weaknesses is that they're extremely stubborn. They put on air. They can pretend because they want to shine after all. So we have you can start seeing how it's easy to misread people because you have to understand what aspect of their consciousness they're expressing. And consciousness is the ultimate determining factor on who they are and what they're about. Astrology by itself is just not enough.
Right. Well, her Vedic chart, her 8th house is really dense.
All right, so the eighth house
It's really
is
interesting.
about power.
Mhm.
It's about transformation.
Yep.
It's also about keeping secrets
Yes.
and planning behind the scenes so that we don't know what they're really doing. But you have anything more to add to what you started with?
Oh. What was I saying about Jeffrey Epstein? Or no, before that.
I don't know. We started off with whatever it was called.
Oh. No. Oh, Tartaria. That we were just kind of having. Yeah. Mostly, what I'm doing right now is I'm listening to a lot of arguments for and against, and a variety of positions, and kind of just going down the rabbit hole a little bit. Oh, here's Have you ever done an astrological reading on president? Yes, yes, I have him. Absolutely, I
On
have him.
president?
No, I have. I
On
have
president. That doesn't say
President
any.
Biden.
Oh, now we know who you're talking about.
I could probably pull his chart up. I can't. I have to figure out
No,
how to show it on the
certainly
screen.
we've said quite a bit about Biden being a Scorpio in the year of the
Oh yes, but
water
yeah.
horse.
So let's tell her about Joe Biden in that capacity. Yeah, go ahead and read for him. We'll read for him. Yeah. So he is a Scorpio and he's year of the water horse.
Water
So
horse,
yeah, we
which
can
is
talk about him. Absolutely.
which is the most reckless of the horses, because the horse, first of all, is weak in this year, that as water controls fire and the horse prefers fire.
Hold on. I'm gonna come right back. I just
So instead of having someone who is super stubborn, who is going to be very firm at pursuing its ideas, it is supportive of those that they like and destructive of those that they feel no longer have value. But water forces this individual to tell stories, to try to manipulate people by comforting the other individual, by, let's say, manipulating information, putting on air, uh, pretending to be what they're not, because they can do that since water has different temperatures at different heights. So we know that water can appear one way, but actually be another. That it appears to be very, very silent and still, and we don't know that there's something stirring underneath. That is how, um, what is it, monsoon, or is it great tempests? When you have, I forgot what they're called, when they have the great floods and the great uh, commotion created by weather. This is all underwater because the water begins its problem way deep in the sea, very, very down into the bottom of the sea, where the motion is very restrained by the weight of the water. But as that flicker, that vibratory quality, that disturbance begins to ascend through the ocean and move upward, as it moves upward, this little flicker starts to turn into a heavy duty movement. By the time it gets to the surface, it becomes not monsoon, but
A tidal wave.
Tidal
A
wave.
tidal wave.
So this placid water, uh, week later, 3 weeks later, a month later, will turn into a tidal wave, and we didn't see that coming. And that's the water element. And water likes to control. Well, they like to get around other people. They
Right.
have the power of seduction. They have the power to
Yes.
persuade
Mhm.
because they reflect what the other party is thinking or wants.
Right.
And water pretends to be that very thing.
They have a way to.
So by accident, they can become liars. The real liars are the fire group, because they have to burn one way or the other. If they decide to distort the truth, they will always do that. If they tend to be telling the truth, they'll always tell the truth.
Well, and so
Water, on the other hand, vacillates between the two extremes,
Mhm.
and you can't tell. And because it's
I
very
guess that doesn't.
volatile, a horse is going to conduct themselves in a very maniacal way. I have a sister-in-law.
Right.
was
Yeah,
a
he has things coming
maniac.
out of his mouth he shouldn't have coming out of his mouth. That's just
Sister-in-law, a
Clint Eastwood's a
maniac,
horse too, you know?
who was the fire horse, born in water, 1942.
Yeah.
Clint Eastwood was born in 1930.
Yep,
That's
yep.
a slightly different thing because.
But I'm
he's
talking
looking-
about the quirkiness of the horse and the stuff that just comes out of their mouth.
Well, yeah, but that's an addition to the first problem.
Right.
That is that water
Mhm.
vacillates.
Right.
It appears one way and it can become another way.
Right.
And also, it appears to be harmless, but once it surrounds you, it's in control.
Right. Right.
And so they can persuade you
Hmm.
by making things so comfortable for you that
Right.
they appear to be totally on your side, and they can betray you, the water.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
but then any sign can do that
Hmm.
if they're clever enough. The fire people, unfortunately, don't have that same finesse if they're going to lie, it won't be long before you find out that they're liars.
Right.
And if they're
Like
telling the
you know,
truth,
like
it
Donald
doesn't
Trump.
take long to find out that they
Right.
were always honest. This is fire. Water, on the other hand, will appear one way and it can turn into anything it wants
Mhm.
because it's seductive.
So right. So I was thinking of one of the things that can be frustrating, at least for me, with Biden is well, first of all, he is way too conservative. And but I do believe that he is compassionate. That's a Scorpio, then, and they're going to look for the underdog. Yep. And um, but what he does do is that part of it is that he does enter a room. He is used to being able to persuading people, to being able to kind of surround them with his
Well, we
energy
also know that he was a
energetically.
liar. He was a
And
plagiarist.
and
And he accomplished nothing
and
because
so as a
he
result,
placated
and
everybody.
because horses tend to be a little bit of a show off, unfortunately, he also compromised a little too much because he was more into the ego. Because a horse will do that. Oh, look at how great I am
I
at doing
said he
this.
placates.
Right.
Water will placate.
Right. Yes, I just had my own flavor to add to that, if that's okay.
If you're dealing with metal people, you have to be playing the same game they're playing. It's the same rules. Not with water.
I know.
With water, they will manipulate whatever they can, whatever allows them to get access to you, they will do. They will go through that process because that's part of the thing about water. It absorbs everything. You
Mhm.
go into water, it doesn't resist you.
Well, doesn't water also seek its own level?
Of course, it means that if you get into the water, it will receive you completely,
Mm,
but you don't know that it can drown you.
right.
And it will if you don't
That's
pay
true.
attention
It's true.
with water.
Mm.
In other words, they're placating you and you don't realize they're taking over. That's the problem with water. And Biden is a complete liar. He won his election by lying and by getting a bunch of people to get together with him to
Well,
allow
I
him
don't know
to
that
win.
that's really Biden. I think that Biden
Well,
is
no,
the
that's Biden. That's Biden. Biden is a liar. He lied for his son. He set his son up in the Ukraine. Yes, Biden's a big liar. What, are you kidding me? Uh, I don't believe a thing that comes out of Biden's
oh
mouth.
boy.
Not a thing. Uh, I would take Trump any day at his word because Trump is a maniac, and he made no bones about being a maniac. But then Trump
Mm.
stood for certain things. He did a lot of things that he promised to do. Biden so far has done nothing he promised. Nothing. So that's my feeling about Biden. And I should get along with Biden because a horse gets along with the dog. But then I'm a fire year, he's a water year. I'm an Aries, he's a Scorpio. There's reasons for disagreement between us.
I don't think that he has.
I see through
Well,
Biden in and
I
out.
don't think that it's fair that only you get to make that
Oh,
commentary.
Carrie, you're metal and you'll be appeased by water because it
No,
keeps you cool.
I don't think that.
Well, the
that
fact of the matter is,
it's fair that I don't get to place my own argument.
astrologically, he is
Mhm.
more of your
No.
friend than not. So let's remember that when you make a statement about Biden. He's not my friend. I don't consider him my enemy,
Mhm.
but I know him a lot longer than you do because I remember him when he was lying about publishing certain things. And this goes back 30, 40 years. So I know a little bit about Biden.
Mhm.
In any event, I think the time is up now. It's past 3 o'clock. We should say goodbye, and hopefully we'll have something as interesting or more interesting in
That
our
wasn't
next.
really useful, and I apologize.
What wasn't useful? You have a disagreement stated. I'm not
No.
ashamed.
It's to go into. I prefer to go into something more broad, but I don't.
Well,
So
I
that
like broad and I like refined. It doesn't matter. Whichever applies, that's the one I will use.
I think
in
what I'm
order
going to do. I think I think I'd rather have a conversation about his Vedic chart.
Carrie, you're welcome to talk
So-
about Biden all you want, and if you don't
Mhm.
want me to contribute, I won't.
I
I
no.
assure you. Well, you're saying you're gonna go into his Vedic chart, like, as if I really don't know
Oh,
Vedic
I don't
astrology all that
I
well.
prefer to have a broader conversation.
Well,
That's
the fact of the
Is it okay
matter
if I
is,
do that?
Carrie, I am not here
Nobody's
to
gonna watch
I
us
am not
anymore.
here I'm not here to dispute you. I'm using Western astrology, and I consider that as effective, if not more effective than Jyotish. Western astrology does not pretend to get into mansions and these very, very refined interpretations. And for that, I still give Jyotish astrology a lot of credit because it can accomplish things that we
I
can't do in
appreciate that,
Western
Lawrence.
astrology. However, it's not going to take Biden and turn him into what he is not. So, having said that, I would like to say farewell to those who have been watching until the next time, which will be, um, I guess, Wednesday.
Okay. All our love and travel light.
Bye.